Hi guys, the name is Mark and I want to do just a quick little video here. I won't be doing any more videos after this for a while, maybe on different things, but not on these topics or subjects. And um, I want to tell you guys a little story, okay? Basically, even if you're in possession and you've applied for birth certificates and to have a social insurance number or social security number, all this stuff, right? Even if you've had all this stuff, I want to share something very important with you, and it goes like this, okay? If you've never ever had a criminal record, okay, this is why I'm sharing this with you. If you've never ever had a criminal record and you've never been fingerprinted in your life, you might want to listen to the story. This story is going to be for you. And it goes like this. Basically, I know some people, and some people through their identification into the river, they've never had a criminal record, they've never been fingerprinted, they've never had anything like this. Yes, they may have had driver's licenses and all that stuff, but they threw it all into the river, into the ocean, and they said bye-bye, right? So basically what happened was they they simply just dropped off the face of the planet. They stopped using last names because last names are for slaves, right? And stuff like that. And so basically, they dropped off the face of the planet. Now they work in the private, they work in the quiet. They've changed their first names. Their first name might have been Bob or Bill, and now it's Zowie. And this is it. They no longer run around carrying any identification. They no longer use last names. And you might say, well, that's fine, but what if I get pulled over by the police and they ask me to identify myself? I'll tell you guys a little story, and I know several people who have done this, and it goes like this. One particular instance, somebody was hitchhiking and they got pulled over by the police, and the police pulled them over. It was the RCMPs, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And the police pulled them over on the side of the highway and put on their cherries, and their lights, and pulled them over. And they said to Buddy Guy, they said, it's illegal for you to be hitchhiking on the side of the highway. And he looked at them and nodded. And then they said, well, listen, who are you? You got some identification. He didn't say a word. He stopped talking right there. He knows he has the right to remain silent. Now, rights are for slaves, but he knows that he has the grace from the God Almighty to shut up. So he shut up. So it turned out, long story short, the cops were like, okay, well, if you don't want to give us identification, we're going to have to arrest you. We're going to have to take you down to the station until we identify who you are. So they took him down to the station. Now, keep in mind, he never had a criminal record. He never had an ounce of anything, right? So he had never been fingerprinted, never had a criminal record. They took him down to the police station and they tried to ID him. They had taken his fingers, dipped it in ink. They had ran a CPIC, a scan, right, to see if there were any database bases that had images of his fingerprints. They couldn't find any databases with anything on his fingerprints. Therefore, they still couldn't identify who he was, right? Now, the police were threatening to kick the shit out of him if he didn't ID himself and the whole 9 yards. And basically, well, he just used the grace of God and he shut up, right? That simple. He said, I had nothing to say to these people to begin with. They're not my friends, so why would I even talk to them, right? And so basically the police, they threw him in jail. Some cops threatened to punch him out and kick the shit out of him if he didn't identify himself. And he said, whatever. He said, that's life. He said, but I wasn't about to admit to being to a slave name and admitting to the fact that I'm a slave. So they threw him in jail, and basically 24 hours later, they had to bring him before a magi right? You're back to magi's, magicians, right? And basically evil, right? Necromancers, foreseers of the future, all this stuff, right? Spellcasters, that's what magi's are. And effectively, they took him in front of the judge, and the court clerk ran the docket number off, and then the judge said, okay. The Crown said, let's proceed. And the judge said, okay. So they started talking, and the judge said, well, who is this guy? And the cop looked at him and he said, I don't know, Your Honor. To be honest with you, I really couldn't tell you. He didn't want to identify himself. So then the judge says to the arresting officer, he says, well, why did you bring this man in front of me and into my court? And the cop, the police officer says, well, Your Honor, he had failed to identify himself, and so that's why the reason why I brought him in front of you into your court. And the judge basically looked at him and said, so let me get this straight. You have no clue who this person or individual is? And the officer said, no, Your Honor, we ran scans to see if his fingerprints would come up, if there were any matches. Nothing came up. And basically the judge said, well, let him go. That was that, literally, right? Now, you people might be going, oh, well, I don't know if I believe that. But the bottom line is the court is in business, and the judges are called administrators, and they will administrate on these accounts, and they will administrate on the account that if you're a person, they have the right to deal with you, and then thus the court has the right to deal with you. But if the court has no business with you and you're in no contract with the government of Canada or the US or any other world governments, well then basically they have no business with you because you haven't admitted into being into a contractual business relationship with these people, which would thus allow the judge to administrate and do his job, okay? So that's simple. And this has happened on a few occasions with people I know where, again, they never had criminal records. They had basically buried their stuff in the backyard, their identification, the whole 9 yards. They changed their first name. It used to be Bill, now it's Bob. And they no longer use last names. They run around. They work in the private. They've never told the government that, listen, I no longer want to be a citizen, because then the government would list you and label you as a terrorist, right? And then the government may come after you even harder. So they simply just quietly went about their affairs without telling anybody, and now they live in different places and provinces and states, and now they're under different assumed names, like their name is no longer Mark, now it's Bill. And on a few occasions, these people that I know, they've been pulled over, and simply put, like the hitchhiking story, they've been pulled over and, you can't be hitchhiking or you can't be standing on the side of the road, and they just shut up. What's your name? They shut right up. They don't even say hi to the officers. They say nothing. It's, basically you have the right to shut the fuck up and remain silent. And they shut up. You have the grace of God to do this, okay? So they shut up, and once again, the police will say, well, listen, if you don't want to give me identification, that's failure to produce identification, right? And they don't say anything, and then the cops will say, okay, well, you didn't want to give us ID, we'll have to throw you in jail, and then you got to come before a judge. So they throw them in jail. 24 hours later, they come before a judge, a justice of the peace, an administrator, a magistrate, right? Magistrators, and they come in front of the judge. The court docket gets read off, and basically, and then the judge says, and who is this guy? And the cop, once again, says, for the life of me, Your Honor, I couldn't tell you. I haven't got the foggiest clue who this guy or girl is. And then the judge will say, so you brought him in because why? And then the officer will say, well, they failed to give ID and produce ID and tell me who they were. And then the judge will say, so let me get this straight. You're bringing somebody into my courtroom who you haven't got the foggiest clue is, we have no contractual business relationship with, and you're bringing these people in front of me? And the cop will look confused, and he'll go, well, yeah, I just thought I was doing my job, Your Honor. And the judge will say, let him go. That's it. That's all. They still haven't identified these people. They still don't know who these people are. These people have never spoken to say who they were, because how could they be a name on a piece of paper to begin with? They're not. They're this. Whatever this is in the flesh, that's what they are, okay? They're spiritus beings, spiritual beings. And simply put, they all got released. And so, yes, the cops may threaten to kick the shit out of you, and if you don't identify yourself, we're going to kick the shit out of you and stuff. But this was the price these people were willing to pay. And simply put, they all got brought up before magistrates and judges the next day, and they were all let go. The judge, well, let them go. I have no business with this man. I have no business with this woman. Literally, people. I cannot make this shit up. And this is the most simplest, effective way to get rid of your stuff, to dump your shit, if you've never had a criminal record or ever been convicted, right? And so, and say for example, in 5, 10, 20 years later, you do have health issues or something like that. Well, then you can simply go dig out that identification from the side of a mountaintop or underneath a tree and pull it out and then go to the hospital and claim that you are now this person again so you can get their fictitious health care. You see where I'm going with this, people? So I'm not going to convolute matters. The only reason why everybody is like, oh, what's your process and what did you do and stuff. I only did my process because when I was 17 and 18, I was convicted and I was fingerprinted. So even if I refused to identify myself, they'd simply take me down to the police station. They would dip my fingers in ink and they would run a CPIC and a C-scan and all this stuff. And then they would match my prints and they would determine that, hey, you're Mark Simser, okay? So that's why I had everything notarized and authenticated through the Attorney General's office that I was no longer a citizen on the citizenship, and that basically I don't have a last name anymore. I only use my God-given names, which are Mark Randolph, because these were foregiven to me by my parents and through God. This had nothing to do with man, but last names are for slaves. So because I had a criminal record, that's why I had everything authenticated, notarized, and I sent this all my identification. I rendered unto Caesar what is Caesar's. But the even smarter way, once again, here's the other side of the analogy, the even simpler analogy. If you've never been fingerprinted and you've never had a criminal record, you simply bury your stuff in the backyard, you stop using that last name, you change your first name from Bob to Bill, and that's it. You quietly go about your affairs, and should on the road of life, you know, maybe you're hitchhiking or you simply get pulled over and somebody tries to ID you, you just do not talk to the cops at all. You simply shut the frig up, you shut up, you let them try to process you like a piece of processed cheese. They'll throw you in jail the whole 9 yards, and yes, this will suck, and you'll be in jail, and the police might even be threatening you, but you hold fast, and you hold steady, and you do not identify yourself, and you shut the frig up at all costs, okay? And then basically they simply can't ID you. And I don't care if you've had driver's licenses and all that stuff prior, they won't ID you and they won't have the slightest clue who you are. And then 24 hours later, you'll go in front of a magi trader again, and he'll simply say to the cop, and who is this guy? Well, we don't know, Your Honor. Well, why are you bringing this guy or girl before me? Well, because they refuse to ID themselves, Your Honor. So let me get this straight. You haven't got a clue who this person is? And the cop will say, no, we've tried everything we could to get a name out of him, and we just simply couldn't get a name out of him. And the judge will say, get him out of my court. Let him go. Literally, and release him. And I don't mean release him as in release him into another contract, okay? So you never sign anything, you shut the frig up, and the next day, after 24 hours, man, they'll kick you back out of the police station and you'll be on your happy way traversing to wherever it is you have to go, okay, people? So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope this video finds you well. I send everybody much peace, love, respect, and you know, stop convoluting things, right? You know, if you've never had a criminal record, don't even inform the government that you no longer want to be a citizen, because, you know, that it's all fraud. And personally, being a citizen means that you're a slave and you could have the right to go into jail or the right to go to a death chair, to your death sentence, okay, people? So it's that simple. Once again, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope everything finds you well. Cheers, peace, namaste, and well, till then, keep your heads up and your sticks on the ice. Cheers, bye, peace.